I remember the day everything changed like it was yesterday. I was just 9 years old, sitting at our kitchen table, when Mom and Dad sat down with serious faces I'd never seen before. Dad reached for my hand, his own trembling slightly. "Amber, sweetheart," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell you something important." That was the day we learned about the cancer. I didn't fully understand what it meant then, but I understood enough to know that my world was about to turn upside down. For the next 2 years, our cozy house became a revolving door of doctors, relatives, and well-wishers. I watched my father, once strong and vibrant, slowly fade away. Mom tried to keep things normal, but nothing was normal anymore. She'd force smiles during the day, but at night, I'd hear her crying in their bedroom. I'd sit outside their door, wanting to go in, but not knowing what to say. When Dad passed away, I was 11. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and hushed voices. Mom held my hand so tight it hurt, but I didn't mind. I thought we'd get through it together. I was wrong. A week after the funeral, Mom sat me down again, this time alone. "Amber, I've been talking to your grandmother," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I think it would be best if you stayed with her for a little while. Just until I can get things sorted out." "But why can't I stay here with you?" I asked, my voice small. "I need some time alone, honey, to process everything, to figure out how to move forward." She tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, but the gesture felt hollow. "It'll just be for a few months." Grandma Margaret, Dad's mother, picked me up the next day. She didn't say much during the drive to her house, but I could see her knuckles white on the steering wheel. When we arrived at her modest 2-story home, she helped me carry my bags to the guest room. Over the next few months, Mom would call every few weeks. The conversations always followed the same pattern. "When can I come home, Mom?" "Just be patient, sweetie. Just a little longer." "But I miss you." "I miss you too. But this is better for now. You understand, right?" I didn't understand. Neither did Grandma, though she never said it outright. She'd just press her lips together whenever Mom called, her disapproval clear in the way she'd busy herself in the kitchen, banging pots and pans a little louder than necessary. Grandma made sure I never felt unwanted. She'd cook my favorite meals, help me with homework, and tell me stories about Dad when he was young. But no matter how comfortable I was at Grandma's, it wasn't home. I kept waiting for Mom to come back for me, to want me again. After 6 months at Grandma's, Mom finally came for me. I was doing homework at the kitchen table when I heard a car pull up outside. Through the window, I saw Mom step out of an unfamiliar blue sedan. A man I'd never seen before stayed in the driver's seat. "Amber," Mom burst through the door, more animated than I'd seen her since Dad died. Her hair was styled, her makeup fresh, and she was wearing a new dress. "I've got wonderful news." Grandma appeared from the living room, arms crossed. "Sarah, this is unexpected." "Mom, Amber, I want you to meet someone special." Mom was practically bouncing. "Well, he's waiting in the car. He's a bit shy about coming in, but..." She grabbed my hands. "Amber, honey, I'm getting married. His name is Robert, he's absolutely wonderful. A successful businessman, and he has 2 daughters about your age. You'll have sisters, isn't that exciting?" I looked at Grandma, whose face had turned to stone. "Sarah," Grandma's voice was careful, measured. "Don't you think this is a bit sudden?" "Oh, Margaret, when you meet him, you'll understand. He's perfect for us. Amber, he's going to be such a wonderful stepfather to you. And his girls, Emma and Lisa, they're 9 and 10. Their mother passed away 3 years ago, and Robert's raised them alone. We're going to be one big, happy family." I peered out the window at the man in the car. He was staring straight ahead, not even glancing toward the house. "Come on, Amber," Mom said, already gathering my things. "Let's go home. The girls are waiting to meet you." The drive home was filled with Mom's chatter about Robert, the wedding plans, and how perfect everything would be. When we pulled up to our house, the house Dad and Mom had bought together, two girls were sitting on the front steps. They looked like matching dolls, with their identical blonde hair and pink dresses. "Girls," Mom called out, waving. "Come meet Amber." I stepped forward, trying to smile. "Hi, We know who you are," the taller one, Emma, cut me off. Her voice was sweet as honey, but her eyes were cold. "Our dad told us all about you." "Yeah," Lisa, the younger one, chimed in. "But just so you know, he's not going to be your dad. He's our dad. And your mom is going to be our new mom," Emma added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're going to be one big happy family. Right, Sarah?" "Of course, sweetie," Mom beamed, completely missing the tension. 3 months later, I stood in front of a mirror in a plain blue dress while Emma and Lisa twirled around in matching pink bridesmaid gowns. The wedding was about to start, and I could still hear the echoes of their screaming from earlier. "We won't wear the same dress as her," they'd shrieked when Mom suggested matching dresses for all three of us. "She's not even really part of the family." In the official wedding photos, I'm barely visible, thanks to Emma and Lisa strategically positioning themselves to block me out. As I stared at those photos later, I realized this wasn't going to be the happy family Mom had promised. Life in our blended family quickly settled into a routine. Robert wasn't cruel, he just acted like I was invisible. He'd come home from work, hug Emma and Lisa, kiss Mom, and walk right past me as if I were a piece of furniture. Mom, desperate to prove her devotion to her new husband, showered his daughters with attention while barely sparing a glance my way. The first Christmas after the wedding made it crystal clear where I stood. Emma and Lisa each got new iPads and designer clothes, while I received a basic phone and some discount store sweaters. Thank God for Grandma Margaret. She never forgot me. For my 13th birthday, she gave me a beautiful silver locket with Dad's picture inside. Emma spotted it around my neck at dinner. "That's so pretty," she said, eyes gleaming. "You should share it with me. That's what sisters do." When I refused, I found the locket's chain mysteriously broken the next day. Another time, Grandma sent me a limited edition set of art supplies. I loved drawing, just like Dad had. A week later, I found my sketchbook soaked in water and the expensive pencil snapped in half. When I confronted Lisa, she just smiled. "Prove it was me," she said sweetly. "Mom," I tried showing her the ruined supplies. "Look what they did." "Amber, stop being dramatic," Mom sighed. "You probably left them out in the rain yourself. Stop trying to blame your sisters for everything." Then, when I turned 15, Mom dropped another bombshell. She was pregnant. The house exploded with excitement, everyone except me, that is. Robert's daughter squealed about having a baby brother or sister, while I sat quietly, already knowing what this would mean. The baby, a boy they named Michael, arrived in spring. 3 weeks after Mom came home from the hospital, they called a family meeting in the living room. "Now that Michael's here," Mom began, not quite meeting my eyes, "we need to make some changes to the sleeping arrangements." Robert cleared his throat. "We think it would be best if you moved in with Emma and Lisa. Michael needs his own room." "No," the word came out before I could stop it. "I'm not sharing a room with them. This is my room. This is my father's house." The room went silent. "What did you say?" Mom whispered. "Dad bought this house," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "He paid for it. You and your daughters moved into our house, and now you want to take my room away?" Robert's face turned red. Emma and Lisa sat with their mouths open, for once speechless. "How dare you?" Mom's voice shook. "How can you be so selfish? After everything we've done for you?" Tears started rolling down her cheeks. "Robert has been nothing but good to you, and this is how you repay us?" "Good to me?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "He doesn't even look at me." After that, the house became even more of a prison. Nobody spoke to me at meals. Mom and Robert acted like I wasn't there, and Emma and Lisa didn't even bother with their usual taunts, they just pretended I was invisible. The silence was somehow worse than their cruelty had been. After 3 days of complete silence in the house, I couldn't take it anymore. I picked up my phone and called the one person who had never let me down. When Grandma's car pulled into the driveway, I saw Mom and Robert watching from the kitchen window. As I walked out with my backpack, they didn't try to stop me. If anything, they looked relieved. Life at Grandma's felt like being able to breathe again after years of holding my breath. We fell into an easy routine: breakfast together every morning, homework at the kitchen table while she baked, long talks about Dad and what he was like at my age. 2 months passed quickly. Then one morning, Grandma sat me down with her serious face on. "Amber, I need to tell you something," she said, taking my hands in hers. "I've been talking to your mother. She's willing to give up her parental rights. And I want to adopt you, officially." I stared at her, hardly daring to believe it. "Really?" "Really. It's your choice, of course. But I want you to know that this has always been your home, and I would be honored to be your legal guardian." Tears welled up in my eyes as I hugged her. "Yes, please, yes." The legal process was surprisingly smooth. Mom signed the papers without hesitation. The only thing left was to get my remaining belongings from the house. When I went back, no one was home. I found all my things packed in boxes in the garage, covered in dust. My old room had been completely transformed into a nursery for Michael, painted blue with clouds on the ceiling. I loaded my boxes into Grandma's car without saying goodbye. They hadn't bothered to say goodbye to me, after all. High school was different now. Emma and Lisa still attended the same school, but we existed in parallel universes. We'd pass each other in the hallways without a glance, like strangers who had never shared a home. Sometimes I'd hear them laughing with their friends, talking about family vacations or weekend plans, but it was like listening to a radio station playing in another room, distant and disconnected from my reality. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make something of myself. Grandma supported me every step of the way, helping me with college applications and encouraging me to aim high. The day my acceptance letter arrived from State University, along with a partial scholarship offer, Grandma was more excited than I'd ever seen her. "I have something to tell you," she said that evening. "I'd been saving for your college fund since the day your father died. I wanted to make sure you'd have options." The amount she had saved left me speechless. With the scholarship covering most of my tuition, we decided together to save most of the money for my future. I'd need it someday for grad school, or maybe to start my own life after college. Those first few years of college were transformative. I called Grandma every Sunday, visited during holidays, and finally felt like I was building my own life. My mother, Robert, and their perfect little family became distant memories, like characters in a story I'd read long ago. The call came during my final semester of senior year. "Amber," Grandma's voice was weaker than I'd ever heard it. "The doctors found something." I started making the trip home every weekend after that. Each time, Grandma seemed a little frilier, a little more tired. But she never lost her spirit. "Don't you dare skip any classes for me," she'd insist, even as the hospital machines beeped around her. "I didn't save all that money for your education just for you to play nursemaid to an old woman." When graduation day came, Grandma was too weak to attend. The nurses helped prop her up in her hospital bed, and we set up her smartphone so she could watch the live stream. After I crossed the stage and got my diploma, I looked directly into the camera and blew her a kiss. Later, she told me she'd cried through the whole ceremony. I went straight from graduation to the hospital. For the next week, I barely left her side. We talked about everything and nothing, memories of Dad, her childhood stories, her hopes for my future. Then one quiet morning, while I was holding her hand, she slipped away peacefully in her sleep. Planning the funeral felt surreal. I was choosing flowers and making arrangements in the same house where Grandma and I had shared breakfast just weeks ago. Then, on the day of the service, I saw them. My mother, Robert, Emma, Lisa, and a young boy I barely recognized as my half-brother Michael walked into the funeral home. 7 years had changed them. Emma and Lisa were now grown women, and Michael, who I'd last seen as a baby, was now a grade schooler in a small black suit. The ceremony passed in a blur. I stood alone by the casket, accepting condolences from distant relatives and Grandma's friends. Then suddenly, Mom was there. "Amber," she said softly, her eyes red from crying. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Margaret, she was a wonderful woman." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Listen," Mom continued, twisting her hands together nervously, "I know it's been a long time, but would you consider coming to dinner with us? All of us? We'd like to try to make things right." Looking at her face, lined now with age and grief, I felt the weight of all our unsaid words. "I'll think about it," I managed to say. A week later, after meeting with Grandma's lawyer and learning she'd left me everything, the house, her savings, all of it, I made my decision. Maybe it was time to face the past. The house I'd grown up in looked smaller somehow, shabbier. The paint was peeling, the garden overgrown. Inside, Robert, Emma, Lisa, and Michael were waiting around the dining room table. The awkward silence was broken only by the clinking of silverware against plates. "So," Mom finally said, forcing brightness into her voice, "what are your plans now that you've graduated?" I took a slow sip of water before answering. "I'm staying in town, actually. Going to live in Grandma's house." The flash of satisfaction in Mom's eyes was quick, but I caught it. Something about that look made me uneasy, though I couldn't say why. My degree in business administration landed me a position as a junior executive at Wilson & Associates. The salary was more than I'd ever dreamed of making right out of college, and with no rent to pay thanks to Grandma's house, I was able to save a good portion of my earnings. Mom started dropping by regularly, usually with fresh-baked cookies or a casserole. At first, our conversations were awkward, filled with long pauses and careful words. But gradually, she began opening up about their struggles. The heating bill was so high this month, she'd sigh, or Michael's growing so fast, he needs new shoes again. The first time I offered help, it was almost automatic. Mom was talking about a leaky faucet they couldn't afford to fix. "I have some extra cash," I said, pulling out $200. "Here, get it fixed." The way her face lit up made something warm stir in my chest. After that, it became a regular thing, small amounts here and there for whatever crisis they were facing that week. Then, surprisingly, Emma and Lisa started coming around too. They told me about their jobs, Emma as a receptionist, Lisa working retail, and their struggles to make ends meet. It was strange hearing them talk without any trace of their old meanness. When Mom mentioned that Michael needed a laptop for school, I didn't hesitate. The smile on his face when I gave it to him made all our past history seem distant and unimportant. "You're the best big sister ever," he said, hugging me. It was our first real hug. The real breakthrough came during my business trip to New York. When Emma and Lisa asked if they could tag along, I was hesitant at first, but their excitement was contagious. "We've never been anywhere," Lisa admitted. "Dad always said we couldn't afford it." I booked them economy tickets and found a decent tourist-class hotel in Manhattan. Watching them experience New York for the first time was like seeing the city through new eyes. They took pictures of everything, gasped at the height of the skyscrapers, and couldn't stop talking about how amazing it all was. During our dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy, Emma raised her glass of house wine. "To family," she said, and for the first time, the word didn't feel wrong. Back home, our regular dinners became a tradition. Mom, Emma, and Lisa would always insist on choosing budget-friendly restaurants, and they never ordered anything expensive. They seemed genuinely grateful for everything, no matter how small. Mom's call came on a Tuesday afternoon, just like any other. I was reviewing work documents when my phone lit up with her name. "Hi, sweetie," her voice was warm, familiar. "How are you doing?" We chatted about nothing in particular, Michael's school performance, Emma's new haircut, the usual family gossip. Then, just as we were wrapping up, she added, "Oh, by the way, honey. I hate to ask, but could you maybe transfer $200? The car needs some minor repairs. Sure, Mom. I'll send it right now. You're an angel, Amber. I love you so much. I was about to hang up when I realized the call hadn't ended. There was rustling on the other end, then voices growing clearer. Mom must have thought she'd pressed the end button. Did she fall for it? That was Emma's voice, followed by a laugh I hadn't heard since high school, sharp, mocking. Of course she did. Mom's voice had changed completely, dripping with contempt. She always does. Little Miss Successful with her fancy job and her inherited house. God, I'm so tired of pretending to like her, Lisa groaned. Did you see what she was wearing at dinner last week? That awful blazer? She thinks she's so much better than us just because she went to college. They all laughed, Mom, Emma, and Lisa. Then I heard Robert's voice join in. You're doing great, honey, he told Mom. Keep it small for now. We don't want to spook her. I know, Mom replied. We have to play it smart. Small amounts here and there, build up her trust. Once she completely lets her guard down, then we can really start asking for more. She's loaded now, that house, her savings, her salary. We just need to make sure she spends it on us, instead of herself. It's not fair, Emma whined. Why should she have all that money? We deserve it more than she does. Of course you do, sweetheart, Mom said. You and Lisa are twice the daughters she ever was. Don't worry, we'll get what's ours. She's too stupid to see what's really going on. Always was, just like her father. I ended the call with a single press of my finger, but their laughter kept echoing in my ears. The family I thought I'd finally found had never existed. It had all been an elaborate performance, with me playing the role of the foolish benefactor. The next morning, Mom's number flashed on my phone screen. Amber, honey. We're having a special family dinner tonight. You'll come, won't you? I heard the false sweetness in her voice now, the calculated warmth that I'd been too desperate to recognize before. Sure, Mom. What time? 7 o'clock. Everyone will be there. When I arrived at the house, they were all waiting. Mom had made my favorite lasagna. Emma and Lisa were dressed up, playing their roles perfectly. Even Michael seemed to have been coached to be extra affectionate. Amber, Mom rushed to hug me. You look tired, sweetie. Work keeping you busy? I returned her hug mechanically, noting how she exchanged quick glances with Robert. Throughout dinner, they kept up their performance, asking about my job, laughing at each other's jokes, playing the perfect family. I watched them like I was seeing a play, noticing every forced smile, every calculated gesture. Finally, as we were finishing dessert, Mom cleared her throat. Amber, honey, we actually wanted to talk to you about something important. She reached for Robert's hand, their practiced move for serious conversations. The house, well, we've had some structural issues come up. The foundation needs urgent repairs. We've gotten estimates, Robert added, trying to sound fatherly. It's going to cost about $10,000. Mom leaned forward, her eyes wide and hopeful. We hate to ask, but since you're doing so well. I smiled, and I saw Mom's face light up with triumph. She thought she had me. No. The word fell into the silence like a stone into still water. What? Mom's smile faltered. I said no. Not 10,000, not $10. Not another cent. Emma and Lisa exchanged confused looks. Robert sat up straighter. But honey, Mom started, we really need. You forgot to hang up the phone yesterday, Mom, I kept my voice calm, almost conversational. After you asked for that $200. The color drained from her face. Emma and Lisa froze. Even Michael, who probably didn't understand what was happening, stopped eating his cake. I heard everything, I continued. About how tired you are of pretending to like me. About how you've been playing me for money. About how you think I'm stupid, just like my father. I turned to Emma and Lisa. About how you deserve my money more than I do. We were just joking, Lisa burst out. It wasn't serious. Amber, sweetie, Mom reached for my hand. I pulled it away. You're misunderstanding. The only thing I misunderstood was thinking you had changed. I stood up from the table. But you know what? I should thank you. You've finally shown me who you really are, and now I can stop wasting my time trying to build a relationship with people who see me as nothing but an ATM. I walked out of that house for the last time, ignoring their calls behind me. But of course, they didn't give up easily. The calls started that night, first Mom, then Robert, then the sisters. Voicemails, text messages, emails, all begging forgiveness, claiming it was just a joke, that I was overreacting. When I blocked their numbers, they started showing up at my house, knocking on my door at all hours. I knew I needed a clean break. The next morning, I walked into my boss's office. Janet, remember when you mentioned expanding the New York office? 2 weeks later, I had a transfer approval in hand. I listed Grandma's house with a realtor, and it sold quickly. The market was good, and it was in a prime location. I found a beautiful apartment in Manhattan's Upper West Side, with big windows and a view of the park that would have made Grandma smile. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I think about them, Mom, Robert, Emma, Lisa, and little Michael. I hope Michael grows up to be different from them. But I don't regret my decision. I learned that family isn't about blood or legal documents. It's about love, real love, not the kind that comes with price tags and hidden fees.
You're a killer. Screaming that, my mother-in-law attacked me. Instinctively dodging. She then violently struck the door of the hospital room. This is a hospital. And I had just been called here by my mother-in-law because my husband was hospitalized after a traffic accident and needed me to rush over. What does this behavior mean? What on earth happened? What do you mean by this? I shouted that, keeping my distance from her. You pushed my son towards the road, didn't you? Stunned by her accusation, I clenched my stomach and vehemently denied it. I did nothing of the sort. Who told you such nonsense? At my words, my mother-in-law smirked. Just as I was pondering why, a voice came from behind me. It was me. Talking about nonsense after pushing someone, how can you even say that? It was my husband, speaking from the bed. His legs were bandaged. And he looked at me with utter contempt. My name is Heather, a 27-year-old housewife. Before getting married, I worked as an office clerk in a small company. And I met Nick through a friend's introduction. Nick worked in a company in the same industry, and we hit it off talking about work. After a while, Nick made his move and we got married. And I quit my job to move closer to him. Since Nick was living with his parents, we needed to find a new place for the two of us. However, we couldn't find a satisfying apartment, and soon after the marriage, Nick said, I didn't want to say this so soon, but I was hoping we could live with my mother, who is ill, at my parents' house. Of course, if we could find a great place, that would be best. But she's not forcing us, she'd be happy if we could stay. So please, this is tough, but okay, right? Seeing this, I realized Nick had always intended to bring me to live with his mother. Thinking he was considering my feelings, he didn't force cohabitation immediately. I was anxious about living with my mother-in-law right after getting married. However, when we went to his parents' house to announce our marriage, I got the impression that she was a kind and cheerful person. Moreover, their house had a great location and was impressive. I told Nick, I understand. But I still don't know much about your mother or the house. So please, give me plenty of advice on housework and chores at the beginning. Nick replied with a smile, of course. We promised to work together. I agreed to the cohabitation. And my mother-in-law said warmly after we started living together. Don't be so tense, Heather. For me, you are like a daughter. Just relax. Since she wasn't in good health, I mostly took care of the housework. Their house was large and cleaning was a chore. But I worked hard to keep it clean every day. I also cooked eagerly for my mother-in-law, and she seemed to enjoy every meal. Always saying, "The food Heather makes is delicious. I am so happy to have you as my daughter-in-law." This gradually eased my tension. But then something happened that made me anxious about living with my mother-in-law. One day, as usual, I served dinner and she commented after tasting it. The flavor is a bit strong today. It was meat and potatoes. And I hadn't changed the seasoning. Puzzled, I apologized. I'm sorry, perhaps I added too much salt today. She replied, Don't worry. It's tasty. Relieved, I thought maybe fatigue was affecting my cooking, as I had read somewhere that tiredness can make flavors stronger. Maybe I'm just tired. I'll go to sleep early today. I muttered to myself and went to bed early. However, from that day on, every time I served a meal, she would become grumpy, which had never happened before. Meal times became distressing, and I started to feel anxious. A few days later, she burst out, "Eating such strong flavored food will make me sick. Are you trying to shorten my life?" I had never been scolded so harshly as an adult, and my mind went blank. I stuttered an apology. I always cook the same way. Sorry, I'll make it lighter. These days continued almost daily. At that time, I felt that since I was living there at her grace, I had to listen to her or I might be kicked out. Without a next house lined up, it would be a disaster, so I resolved to save up for moving funds and decided to study cooking for my own benefit. I started researching online, bought books on low-salt cooking, and learned to make meals with less salt and balanced nutrition, considering my mother-in-law's health. But despite my efforts, her comments became harsher. "A woman who can only cook like this is worthless. You are disqualified as a bride." From then on, my mother-in-law seemed to check on my actions more and more. After I cleaned the floor, she would rub it with her finger and say, "The cleanliness is about 60 points. It's mediocre. Maybe you should clean it again." Even when going to the store or a supermarket, she would start fretting. "Don't leave me alone. Planning to run away, aren't you?" Every time I went out, I reassured her I would never run away. Please calm down. However, my persuasion was in vain for a while, and I couldn't earn my mother-in-law's trust. She began watching me around the clock. Because of this, I had absolutely no time or freedom for myself. However, this all abruptly came to an end a few months later. One day, my mother-in-law said with a smile, "Heather, I've decided I won't comment on your actions anymore. It makes both of us uncomfortable and awkward." I was bewildered and responded, "Really? I'm glad to have earned your trust." Although I was relieved, I couldn't genuinely be happy because of her previous intense scrutiny. I suspected she might be monitoring me in some other way. Sure enough, my intuition was spot on. After some investigation, I discovered that unbeknownst to me, my mother-in-law had placed a GPS tracker on me. It was frightening to realize that someone could secretly track you with a GPS in this day and age. I had reached my limit. But getting angry and seizing her phone was the only way to deactivate the GPS. Hoping my husband would see the GPS tracking as over the line, I consulted him after my mother-in-law went to sleep. "Nick, while you're at work, your mom watches my every move all day. Even though I used to be praised for my housework, recently I've been scored on my cleaning and cooking. And sometimes she verbally abuses me. I've been trying just as hard as before. And now with the GPS tracking me all day, I really can't rest and it's tough." However, to my dismay, my husband defended his mother, saying, "Maybe she's doing it to educate you because your housework is sloppy. You need to be aware of your own shortcomings." I was stunned and nearly lost my temper. Since my mother-in-law was sleeping in the bedroom, I couldn't retaliate or argue. I realized there was no one on my side in this house. The only people I could confide in were friends from my hometown, with whom I occasionally exchanged messages to vent my stress. My parents were too busy, and my childhood home was far away, so I couldn't call for help. From that day, the conversations between my husband and me dwindled. One day, before going to work, my husband mentioned offhandedly, "Work's going to be busy. I'm up for a promotion, so I won't be home for a while." With Nick not coming home for a while, it would just be my mother-in-law and me. Honestly, living with her and enduring her constant surveillance and snide remarks felt daunting. Yet, despite saying that, I couldn't leave my ailing mother-in-law alone when she needed assistance. I resolved to endure until my husband returned. If my mother-in-law's nastiness didn't stop, I'd have a serious talk with him when he came back about possibly leaving. With these thoughts in mind, the next day, my mother-in-law asked me to go shopping. "Heather, could you go to the supermarket in the next town over? They have a sale on toilet paper today." She pointed it out on the map, insisting it was the only place selling the brand she preferred, which had come up in conversations with neighbors. The supermarket she mentioned was an hour's walk away, and we usually bought our toilet paper at a nearby store at a similar price. Puzzled, I hesitated to respond, prompting her to urge, "What's the matter? It'll sell out, so hurry up. We can't miss today's deal. Please, do this for me," as she turned on the TV. I sighed quietly, ensuring my mother-in-law didn't notice. Saying out loud that I didn't want to go that far for toilet paper would only aggravate her more. While the idea of going to the supermarket felt bothersome, the thought of being away from her for a longer time provided some relief. Trying to ease the tension, I laughed and said, "It's a supermarket I've never been to, and I'm bad with directions. I'll try to find it using the map," and left the house. Sigh, what am I even doing every day? As I was heading home after successfully completing the shopping, I muttered to myself when suddenly, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. "You're taking too long shopping." Expecting to be scolded, I nervously answered the phone. However, contrary to my expectations, my mother-in-law urgently said, "Nick has been in an accident and taken to the hospital. His condition is critical. So please come right away." I was completely taken aback by the sudden news and struggled to process everything. "Nick's hospitalized," I blurted out. I had many questions, but my mother-in-law hung up abruptly, leaving me increasingly anxious. All I knew was that Nick had been seriously injured, to the extent that hospitalization was necessary. Could it be life-threatening? Or was he unable to communicate while bedridden? Lost in thought, I was hardly present as I made my way to the hospital. Minutes later, I hesitantly opened the door to Nick's hospital room, praying he was all right. Seeing him lying on the bed, I rushed over, asking, "Nick, are you okay?" He seemed conscious, but stubbornly avoided eye contact. As I was puzzled by his behavior, my mother-in-law suddenly stood up and shouted, "Nick has a serious leg fracture because of the accident. It's your fault, isn't it? What are you going to do about this?" "What? Me?" With no recollection of the incident, all I could do was stand there dumbfounded. Then, Nick looked at me and sneered. "Don't play dumb. You pushed me while I was out working. And I got hit by a motorcycle because of it." Even the victim himself was blaming me. I didn't do such a thing. Despite my desperate denials, my mother-in-law yelled, "Enough. I've told you many times you're the culprit. Just admit it. What you're doing is as bad as murder. So pay for the medical bills. And the emotional distress, and let's get divorced, you horrible woman." Unable to bear being falsely accused, I protested. "Wait. There's no way I did anything. I wasn't even there. And I don't know Nick's work schedule or his days off." I refused to accept the blame for something I hadn't done. At that moment, the police and a woman entered the hospital room. The police greeted my husband, Nick, and then went to speak with the attending physician. The woman who remained looked at me, her expression one of sudden realization, and said, "Ah. Thank you so much for earlier. I apologize for barging in suddenly. I am Jane, and I actually supervise your husband at work. I came to visit and hear about what happened." She introduced herself politely. Nick, wide-eyed, exclaimed, "What? You know each other?" I told Nick, yes, sort of, and looked at Jane. That morning, I had noticed something my husband had forgotten. "This is important. I need to deliver it right now." What Nick had forgotten was the key to a company car. He occasionally brought it home, saying it was for driving the car at work. I tried calling him immediately, but couldn't reach him. So I decided to go to his office to deliver it directly. When I hurriedly delivered the key to the office, the woman who handled it was Jane. Unaware of everything, Nick pointed at me and told Jane, "Senior, you should stay away from this one. She's really the worst kind of terrible person." Jane, unfazed, asked Nick, "Why do you think so?" Nick then became frantic, saying, "Because I got seriously injured, and it's all her fault. I was out on a field visit when she suddenly pushed me from behind, causing me to stumble into the road and ultimately get hit by a motorcycle." Jane responded, "I see, that's unfortunate." Then Nick added, "Right? It was around noon, and I was looking up where to eat lunch. But then this happened, just terrible," and began to seek sympathy from Jane. However, Jane's expression suddenly hardened, and she glared at Nick. "That's strange. Your wife was at our workplace at that time. She had come to deliver the company car key you forgot. That story doesn't add up." Jane continued sternly, "Moreover, isn't this key a duplicate you made? All keys for the company cars are accounted for. There are no records of this car having two keys. This key shouldn't even exist. So why was it at your house?" Nick's face turned pale, and he stammered, "Huh? Maybe. I hit my head in the accident, so my memory might be mixed up. I really don't remember anything about the key. Could you maybe ask someone from General Affairs instead?" he said, nervously looking at Jane. Jane firmly replied, "I won't let you say you don't remember." Discovering a duplicated key is a serious issue for the company. It's not like we came to talk to you without investigating. We already have information from Amy in general affairs. Hearing this, Nick suddenly looked shocked and blurted out, "Please stop, my wife is here." "I admit I made the duplicate." Feeling suspicious, I requested, "Could you please tell me more about this?" "Thank you." Jane agreed. "I understand. It might be painful for you. But I think it's a sin to hide the truth from those who should hear it. Actually, your husband duplicated the key and used the company car for a secret meeting with Amy. I processed the situation and confronted Nick. What? You were cheating?" Nick continued to make excuses. "No, maybe someone was using the car pretending to be me? Maybe they put the key in my bag to frame me." Nick looked smug as if he had thought of a clever excuse, but Jane sighed. "We checked the dashcam footage. And it's clear that you and Amy were getting along well in the car. Should we show it to your wife too?" Faced with undeniable evidence, Nick clenched his teeth and, after a deep sigh, admitted to the affair. Jane told him, "We will inform you about your punishment later. But don't expect a promotion, rather, prepare for a demotion." In a panic, Nick pleaded, "Jane, Sr. Please, not a demotion. I will have medical expenses. Look at my legs." But Jane remained unyielding. "The fact that you used the company car for an affair and that your legs are broken are unrelated." At that moment, the police returned to the room. "Sorry for the delay. We were conducting an investigation. And it's true that Nick was pushed onto the road and has a broken leg," the police explained. Nick, who had been crying just moments before, suddenly perked up. "See? It's true that my wife pushed me. Look, Heather. You better tell the truth now. Lying will only make it worse," he said, pointing at me and laughing. The police, looking puzzled at Nick, said, I never said your wife pushed you. We've identified the perpetrator from the surveillance camera footage." Suddenly, my mother-in-law began to fidget conspicuously. Well, there's no need to check the camera footage. When my own son says Heather pushed him, that's the best evidence, isn't it?" she said, laughing exaggeratedly to the police. The police responded seriously to my mother-in-law. "Ma'am, don't play dumb. We have video evidence that it was you who pushed your son. It appears he was hit by a motorcycle immediately after being pushed. So he wouldn't have had a chance to see who it was. We need to confirm this with your son too." Realizing she could no longer escape, my mother-in-law defiantly admitted, yes, I pushed my son." "So what?" Unable to contain my anger, I coldly accused her. "How could you cause an accident to your own child and then blame me? That's truly despicable." My mother-in-law, unfazed, replied, "Because I didn't want to get caught. I sent you far away on purpose. So there would be no contradiction about you being home at the time of the accident, right?" Jane and I were speechless. Nick, seeing his mother's attitude and realizing she nearly got him killed, appeared utterly shocked and began to unravel. "Hey, Mom. What the heck are you talking about? Why can't you say that you didn't do it, that it's a lie? Why not? Explain yourself," Nick screamed, looking like he might strike her at any moment, prompting the police to hurriedly intervene. Despite being restrained, Nick continued unabated, "Heather, I apologize for the affair. You don't have to do the housework or take care of my mother anymore. From now on, let this damn old woman do everything since she caused the accident." His mother, visibly frightened, shook her head. Seeing this, Nick grew even more agitated. "What? Old hag. You can't say you can't do it. Before Heather came, you gave me an allowance and did all the housework, didn't you? Anyway, I can't work with this body. So you'd better work even if you have to crawl," he yelled. I was shocked, but his mother revealed, "This is Nick's true nature. I've been verbally abused by Nick daily while taking care of him. I thought I was finally freed from this life when you came." She spoke tearfully. Even though she said that, I couldn't feel much sympathy for her, but I did feel a bit sorry. I had no intention of helping her or continuing to live in the family home. Seeing her son restrained by the police, she coldly remarked, "Nick has treated me horribly for so long. He was always harsh to me and treated me like a slave before we were married. He squandered money on gambling and yelled at me to work more. Never helping with cleaning or cooking at home, always complaining. I hoped he would change after marriage, but seeing how he treated you, Heather, I realized he hadn't changed. But if I confronted him, I didn't know what he would do. I feared that if you, Heather, got fed up and left, I'd face his relentless attacks alone, and as I've grown weaker, I started to fear him more and more. Then, before I knew it, I pushed him." His mother continued to pour out her grievances to the police, explaining in detail how violent and oppressive Nick had been. Her story seemed endless, and Jane and I left the hospital under police instruction. Eventually, she was arrested for attempted murder. There were various circumstances, including the fact that her son and husband had treated her terribly, but her clear intent to kill Nick led to her arrest. Even as she was being arrested by the police, she didn't resist and actually expressed relief, saying, "If being away from Nick means going to jail, I'm happy to go. Finally, I'm freed from this painful life." As for me, life had also been mostly difficult at home. Since Nick had cheated on me, I couldn't continue living with him, and with his mother gone, I no longer needed to stay in the family home. I packed my things and left swiftly before Nick was discharged from the hospital. Although he was a victim and avoided arrest, he was demoted for duplicating the company car key and having an affair with a junior colleague. Moreover, he was dismissed for repeatedly using company funds to cover expenses for his affair dates. He received no severance pay and was even asked to compensate the company for the damages he caused. Nick complained to the end, "Wait. I've been working hard since I was a new graduate, and they give me nothing. What a toxic company. I'd rather leave such a company." Apparently, he had no awareness that his actions were criminal. Nick had intended to marry his affair partner, but Amy, unwilling to care for a man with broken legs and without a job, fled, leaving him alone. I divorced Nick and made sure to demand alimony from both him and Amy. I kept his contact until the alimony was fully paid, but after everything was settled, I blocked him when he started sending daily emails saying, "I'm sorry. I truly want to reflect and start over." I then settled into a new home, explained my situation, and returned to my former workplace. Although I had resigned once before, everyone welcomed me back warmly. With no children, I decided to focus on my career and build it diligently, living each day with integrity. It's embarrassing that our eldest only finished high school, while the younger one achieved so much. The voice that demeaned me belonged to my mother at our family home. My father nodded along, and my brother, caught in the middle, beamed proudly knowing he was being praised. My brother went to a prestigious university, while I started working after graduating high school. My parents always praised my brother, calling him an elite who had made efforts. Why did such a gap form between us? I am Nicole, a 26-year-old web designer, born in a somewhat rural town. I lived with my grandparents, parents, and younger brother, Sean. Sean was the long-awaited boy, born 7 years after me, and naturally, our parents adored him. They always prioritized his needs and whims over mine, often leaving me feeling neglected. Moreover, our parents never treated us equally. For Sean's birthday, they'd give him big toys as gifts, but since my birthday was close to Christmas, I'd get just one gift combined for both occasions. Usually something educational like study tools. When Sean started playing soccer as a club activity, our parents attended every practice and game to support him. I was in the tennis club during middle school, but even at my final match before retiring, neither parent came because they had to drive Sean around. There were days I felt like crying, but Sean comforted me. He even said to our parents, "That's not true. Nicole is smarter and she even teaches me. She is really amazing." And a few days after my last match, he made me a small bouquet from flowers he picked in the park, showing his gentle nature. Our grandparents also found our parents' favoritism excessive, and often reprimanded them, but by the time I graduated high school, both had passed away one after the other. Sean always stood up for me, but especially our mother didn't find it amusing. She grew strict with him, threatening, "If you keep siding with your sister, I'll make you stand outside." Especially as winter began and snow started falling. I didn't want my much younger brother to suffer, so all I could say was, "You don't have to worry about me anymore." Eventually, Sean stopped defending me, and under our parents' protection, he enjoyed his days filled with sports and studies. After our grandparents' consecutive funerals, my parents simply refused to let me go to university due to a lack of savings. I had wanted to study design, but that was not allowed, and I had to find a job immediately after high school. However, as a final act of defiance, I left our hometown for an office job at a design firm that handled websites for beauty salons and nail shops. Although it was a small company, I couldn't give up on my dream, and managed to get a position as a designer's assistant. While doing office work, I observed the professional designers daily. The harsh reality was difficult, but it only motivated me more to become a web designer myself. My alone time for study became precious. I minimized visits home because whenever I did, my parents would mock me. So I stayed away and spent weekends studying design and enhancing my software skills through online courses. This effort was recognized at work, and one day, I was integrated into the design team. My dedication was well known among the designers, who introduced me to useful materials and connections. By the third year, I had grown enough to be trusted with jobs as a web designer. 8 years after high school, as I became accustomed to my job as a web designer, news of Sean's college entrance exams arrived. He aimed for a famous private university in the city, aspiring to enter its medical school. Thanks to his diligent studies, his success was almost guaranteed. Recalling our childhood, I wanted to support him if possible and told him so. A few months later, Sean passed and got into the famous medical university. I congratulated him warmly. Sean, I'm truly happy for you. I heard how hard you worked, attending tutorials daily. Sean thanked me modestly, but then I received a particular request. Actually, the private medical school requires a donation. It's optional, but Dad and Mom say we'd be looked down upon if we didn't contribute because we're from the countryside. It's better to pay, right? But you know our family's just scraping by with my tuition and living expenses for college. Sean said he would earn some of his living expenses through part-time jobs. But I knew the immense study load waiting for him in medical school would make that difficult. I wanted to contribute, but with our father being a regular employee and our mother working only twice a week, it was a stretch. The tuition for a private medical university was hard enough. They probably counted on using my savings, which they should have just stated outright. Despite deepening my disdain for our parents, I readily agreed to his request and helped with the donation and related expenses for his entrance. Thus, Sean moved to an apartment close to his university, and his new life began. The place where Sean lived wasn't far from my house, so he could rely on me anytime. Maybe he was enjoying his university life too much, as his replies to me were always curt. Yet he would contact me asking for things like, "I want to eat this," or "I need this, please send it." So I found myself sending parcels or lending money, doing financial favors our parents couldn't. We occasionally went out to eat as siblings, but even then, Sean was unresponsive, ignoring me and fiddling with his smartphone, except during meals. Whatever I asked, the only response was, "I'm busy with my studies." His indifferent reactions left me increasingly perplexed. At some point, he began to treat me coldly. Even today's dinner felt like I was forcing him to join me. To lighten the mood, I brought up our home in a deliberately cheerful tone. "Well, I guess Mom and Dad are just happy seeing you doing well." Suddenly, Sean looked at me sharply and distorted his face as if to scoff through his nose. "Of course. I'm at a famous medical university. And you are just a high school grad designer, right? They aren't worried about you at all. You have a job that doesn't even need qualifications." His harsh words made me feel the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean by no qualifications?" "Just what it sounds like, a web designer, right? Nowadays, anyone can do that with a little search on the internet. Some of my classmates can even create websites. Aren't you embarrassed by such a job? Maybe you should study a bit and get some qualifications. Though that might be tough with just a high school brain." "Sean, what's gotten into you?" "I study seriously for my job. Don't mock me without knowing anything." Sean glared at me irritably and grimaced. "Dad and Mom say it every day on the phone. They say it's great how the eldest son got into medical school. But it's embarrassing that their older daughter only finished high school. I'm contacting you and going out to eat with you because they asked me to. Just so the embarrassing sister won't feel too inferior. The future renowned doctor has to take care of you, they say. My parents have always compared me to Sean. He was smart and kind. A reliable brother, but they would directly say to me, "Nicole, you're stupid and slow, and you're not thoughtful." Those memories flash back, making it difficult for me to breathe. Dizziness struck me from the shock, and I lowered my head to endure it. Yet, thinking I was crying, Sean just chuckled lightly and said, "I'm leaving now," then stood up and left. Having gained the freedom of college life, Sean had changed completely. surrounded by geniuses that he never had back home, probably affirmed the praise he received from our parents. Daily hearing from them that Sean is a real genius. And he will definitely become a great doctor. It's no wonder he believed it all. They included plenty of derogatory remarks about me in those praises, which influenced Sean too. Around Christmas, as usual, I went back home for a visit. I was told to bring Sean, who still maintained his attitude of ignoring me. This was his first visit back since he started studying and practicing intensely. Perhaps that's why, as soon as we arrived, my parents clung to him and ignored me. Home was ready with luxurious dishes waiting for Sean, and at night, a big party was held with neighbors, relatives, and Sean's former classmates who remained in the area. Caught up in the atmosphere, Sean began loudly bragging to everyone around. Mom keeps saying to come back home. But I'm studying at that famous private university, what's more, in the medical faculty. It's understandable I can't come back often. Plus, studying at the medical faculty isn't something I can do alone. We need to work in teams, so if I'm the only one to return home, it puts everyone else in a tough spot. Everyone comes to me with their questions, so give me a break. I was in the kitchen, pretending to prepare dishes. But I could hear Sean's loud brags clearly. Though our parents and relatives, who had always lavishly praised Sean, might ignore it. The neighbors and former classmates probably didn't appreciate his boastful talk. Perhaps tired of his grandstanding. A man in my neighborhood brought up a conversation, maybe thinking to do me a favor. By the way, Nicole is also working hard, isn't she? In design, I believe. But Sean and our parents unanimously and flatly denied it. No way, Nicole is hopeless. She seems to be trying, but... That's right, our eldest is just a high school grad, which is quite embarrassing. There's a big gap between her and Sean. In a room filled with former classmates and neighbors with high school diplomas. It's surprising how Nicole can still come home. Laughing loudly, Sean continued as both our parents chuckled. I was just frozen, feeling a rush of anger rising the next moment. Good for you, Nicole. From next year, you won't have to show your face here anymore. Understood. I managed to say, my voice trembling. Despite the apologetic faces of the onlookers. If you say so, I'll take you up on that. I'm never coming back here again. The anger inside me bubbled like magma, but the words that came out were utterly cold. Don't ever show your face here again. On the way to the station, I nearly screamed, holding back the overwhelming emotions. My parents had, at least to some extent, worked and raised 2 children. If I valued my career, I couldn't maintain such relationships. Several months after my decision, just as the new academic year was about to begin. Hey, what's happening with my tuition fees? Sean's voice was tentative, tinged with panic. I responded calmly. I supported last year's. The entrance fee, donation, and first year's tuition, remember? That's not it. I mean for the second year. This year's fees, they're urging me from the university to pay soon. What's going on? What do you mean, what's going on? I never said I'd pay. I could tell Sean was speechless on the other end. Actually, I was only supposed to pay for the donation, right? That can't be. But you know, my living expenses. My ability to save significantly stemmed from switching to a major design firm. Having informed my family about my job change. Days later, I also refused further contact with my parents. Sean's calls became daily, filled with whining. if there had been a sincere apology. Among the messages, there were astonishing ones. People who look down on others shouldn't become doctors. With this, I cut off all contact with my family and welcomed a new season. I had been supporting not only my brother's tuition but also sending money home. Although my brother was talented, he had squandered any substantial money. One day, perhaps stressed, my father caused an incident on the bus during his commute. My mother tried to work, but with only limited part-time experience. My parents attempted to contact me through relatives, but the content they wanted mediated was invariably demanding and authoritative in tone. The relatives recognized that the problem lay with my parents, and gradually they asked me not to worry about it and ceased communicating on their behalf. This led to a thinning of ties with my family, allowing me to return to a peaceful life. According to the relatives, bad rumors were circulating about my brother, who had become a recluse, and my unemployed father, whose unsavory appearance further alienated them. Unable to bear the situation, my mother eventually disappeared from view and now, I'm told, is uncontactable. Left behind, they survive meagerly on welfare, without any income. Warm interactions with neighbors might have offered some solace, but given their behavior, it's unlikely they receive much sympathy from those around them. As for me, my career in design is progressing well. I have secured participation in significant projects that will prominently feature my name. Using this as a stepping stone, I've launched a long-held plan, that is, preparing for university entrance exams. As funds accumulate smoothly and my current work stabilizes, I plan to begin this new challenge. I'm also considering setting up my own business, wanting to learn not only about design but also about management. I'm excited about these new ventures. I won't be able to attend your 60th birthday celebration because I'm on a business trip. Then I don't consider you family. Don't bother coming back. You're getting a divorce. My mother-in-law decides such things on her own. Well then, I'll do just as she wishes. I decided not to come back. Then, my mother-in-law kept calling me desperately. Please, come back home right now. My name is Tracy, I'm a 30-year-old office worker. My husband Joey and I have been married for 3 years. It's been that long, but honestly, I didn't think our marriage would last this long. I met my husband through work, as he frequently visited my company for business. His earnestness in sales was truly impressive. I admired his sincerity towards his work, and every time I saw him, he would greet me properly, which made me think he was a nice person. One day, I happened to go to a bar with a coworker and ran into him. We ended up drinking together and exchanged contact information, which led to meals and outings. After dating for about a year, he proposed, and we decided to get married. It was an unexpected progression that brought us closer and led us to marriage, which felt like fate. At our wedding, many colleagues and friends from both our workplaces attended, making it a memorable and wonderful ceremony. The early days of married life were truly enjoyable. However, concerns started to arise, particularly involving my mother-in-law. I had felt this way since we greeted her for our marriage, as she seemed overly attentive to my husband. Joey is really excellent. He was good at studies during his student days and is very competent at work now. He's truly a son to be proud of. Mom, that's embarrassing. I'm just stating the truth. You'd better quietly accept that you're amazing. My mother-in-law would always praise him excessively and talk about him endlessly when he was around. Speaking of which, Joey was good at sprinting in elementary school, always finishing first. Not just studies, but he was also talented in sports. He was a real genius. If it were just doting parental praise, it wouldn't be a problem. But her excessive love for her son made her quite harsh towards me. "Tracy, you're preparing nutritious meals for Joey, right? Take photos of your daily meals and send them to me." I was bewildered when she first mentioned this right after we got married. However, after repeated requests, I reluctantly sent her the photos. Then, my mother-in-law would constantly criticize the meals I prepared. Not enough vegetables. The amount of meat is insufficient. It looks bad. The menu lacks variety. She would freely complain like that. But I'm also working and busy with my job, so I can't focus that much on meals. Joey says they're delicious and finishes his meals every day, and he has never complained. However, being constantly criticized by my mother-in-law made me feel insecure, leading me to try making more elaborate dishes even when tired from work. But this was physically very taxing. My husband can't cook, and since my mother-in-law demands that I send photos daily, even if my husband were to cook, she'd mistakenly think I made it and criticize me harshly. So I must prepare dinner no matter what. If work were less demanding, it might be possible, but it's tough when I'm busy and need to work overtime. And relentlessly, my mother-in-law calls to complain. "Hey, you're late sending today's dinner photo." "Sorry, I just got home." "What? Just got home? What are you talking about? How can you let Joey wait hungry until this late? Unbelievable. What have you been doing?" "I was at work, overtime." "Don't lie. You must have been out having fun." "No. I'm an office worker, you know." "Even if you say that, you're not given any significant work, are you?" My mother-in-law completely underestimates me. It's probably because of my educational background. I graduated from college, but not a very prestigious one. Therefore, my mother-in-law looks down on me incredibly. A woman from such a third-rate college married my Joey. I really hate it. Thinking back, she said such things even during our marriage introduction. Meeting her for the first time and hearing her say such things made me think she was an unreasonable person. And looking back, Joey just gave a wry smile at the time and did not defend me. Perhaps he thinks the same as his mother. Such thoughts made me feel uneasy, and as we continued our marriage, I realized he was a mama's boy. Well, being doted on and pampered by his mother, it's natural that he treasures her unusually. He often wanted to return to his parents' house. Initially, he made time for us to go out together, but gradually, he became less considerate and more eager to visit his mother. I let my husband go back alone because I didn't want to visit. Every time he would pout and ask, "Tracy, why aren't you coming?" But I tried not to let it bother me. During Easter and Christmas, I couldn't refuse, so I had to go to my in-laws, and each time it was unpleasant. "Tracy, you really are terrible at cooking. The food in the photos you send is so bad, and I feel sorry for Joey every day. When I actually saw you cook, your skills were shockingly poor. You're failing as a woman." While I cooked, my mother-in-law would berate me. It's impossible to cook with her in the way. She doesn't even tell me where anything is, so of course, the flow gets disrupted. Yet, she still finds it right to berate me. She really has a nasty character. She sees me as a great enemy, probably thinking I've stolen her only son. I was thoroughly fed up with Joey's mama's boy tendencies and my mother-in-law's harassment. I thought several times that I would get a divorce this year. Work was tough, and I worried about regretting the decision to divorce after all the effort to marry, so I ended up maintaining the status quo. Before I knew it, 3 years of marriage had passed. On top of the usual harassment, my mother-in-law started nagging me about having children. "It's been 3 years since you got married, and you haven't shown me a single grandchild's face. You're useless, coming from a third-rate university. Everything about you is third-rate, including homemaking and work. The only contribution you can make is having children. Why do I have to be subjected to such comments? I was beyond angry, and I was appalled. People who are truly happy do not choose to continue belittling others. If you are truly content, you naturally wouldn't bother much about others in a good way. My mother-in-law harasses me so persistently that she must not be walking a happy path in life. Although her harassment troubled me, just thinking this way somewhat lightened my heart. However, my mother-in-law started doing something even more bothersome. She began visiting our house frequently. Previously, it was Joey who often went to visit his parents, so my mother-in-law rarely came to our house. But lately, she started coming over, claiming it was because Joey was too busy. When I come home late from overtime, I find her belongings at the entrance. My mother-in-law and Joey would often enjoy a meal in the living room. "Hi, Tracy, you're back. I was just having a lovely time with Joey." "Too bad." "Hi, you were here?" "Yes, I came to see Joey." "There's nothing prepared for you, so make something for yourself." She said this with a triumphant look as she ate. In fact, I didn't want to eat her cooking anyway. I was tired from work and took an aggressive stance. "Did you use the groceries without asking? It's common sense to at least contact me." When I said this, my mother-in-law's face turned red with anger. "What? Why should I have to say such things to you? Living off Joey's support, and yet you have the nerve. Living off his support?" I asked this while looking at my husband, who awkwardly averted his gaze. Whether my mother-in-law is mistaken or Joey has lied, I don't know, but the reality is that I am the one supporting our household finances. I am currently a manager at my company. The company itself is doing well lately, so my salary is quite substantial. On the other hand, despite his high academic credentials, Joey is unable to climb the corporate ladder due to the surplus of elites at his company. He is constantly overtaken by his younger colleagues, and has now been a sidetracked employee. His salary has been decreasing yearly, and it is now about half of mine. So, practically, I am the one sustaining our household. Unaware of this, my mother-in-law continues to berate me. "That's right. You're in the position of asking him to marry you. How can you be so insolent? You're truly hopeless. Can't do housework, can't work properly, and can't have children. It's just a series of can'ts. Who knows when Joey might leave you?" I looked at Joey, who continued to look uncomfortable. Then, he said weakly, "Mom, don't say things like I'm leaving her. Oh, Joey is always so kind. But if I don't be strict, this woman will get carried away. I won't allow that." I was at my wit's end with my mother-in-law. I never thought she could be this persistent. Amidst this, another troublesome situation arose. It happened while I was away on a business trip. My smartphone kept ringing so much during work that I wondered what it could be. I took a moment to go to the bathroom to check it, and saw that my mother-in-law had been calling non-stop. I wondered if something had happened. Even so, feeling it was probably nothing important, I decided to turn off the phone and focus on my work. After finishing, when I turned on my phone, there were even more calls from my mother-in-law. Thinking it might be something serious, I called her back. She answered the phone instantly. "You're late. Answer the phone immediately, you fool." As soon as I answered, she started shouting. Thinking it would hurt my ears, I quickly switched to speakerphone. "What do you want from me?" "We're having my 60th birthday celebration tomorrow, and you must attend." "What? Your 60th birthday?" I regretted calling back. "Yes, I've invited relatives, so you must come. You'll be preparing the food, and I'm leaving all the party preparations to you." "That's impossible." "Huh? What are you saying?" "You don't have the right to refuse. I'm on a business trip right now." "What business trip?" "You're probably just on vacation." Hurry back. Stop it. I'm working and it's impossible for me. I can't attend your 60th birthday celebration because I'm on a business trip. I firmly refused. It seemed my mother-in-law was quite angry and she raised her voice again. Then I don't consider you family. Stay on your business trips forever. Don't bother coming back. You're getting a divorce. My mother-in-law decided such things on her own. But I had reached my limit. I would do just as she wished. I decided not to return. I ignored all the incoming calls from Joey. Then, my mother-in-law started bombarding me with calls, but I ignored all of them too. I went back to my parents' house and commuted to work from there. Before I knew it, a month had passed. Then, my mother-in-law started calling again. Reluctantly, I answered. She pleaded with me in a voice I had never heard before. Please, come back right now. If things continue this way, Joey will be. My mother-in-law was in a panic, understandably, since Joey's salary alone couldn't cover the rent for their house. And since he doesn't do any household chores, she must have been coming over to clean and do laundry. However, being unable to pay the rent and potentially getting evicted would be quite troublesome. Being unable to pay rent is essentially the same as being in debt. My mother-in-law was desperate, but it had nothing to do with me. The signal seems bad. I pretended I couldn't hear her. In any case, I will be divorcing Joey. Goodbye. What? Hold on. I hung up the phone and blocked my mother-in-law's number. Then I hired a lawyer and demanded a divorce from my husband. I was prepared to take it to court if necessary, and he quickly agreed to the divorce. Thus, I was able to divorce Joey successfully. Moreover, I was able to demand some alimony from my husband. He returned to his parents' house after the divorce, but he seems to be feeling very awkward as he had lied to his mother all this time. He also made a mistake at work and faced a pay cut. My former mother-in-law was shocked to learn that her son had become so unreliable at his company, and she was so distraught that she became bedridden. Along with this news, Joey sent numerous emails asking for help. They truly are a hopeless pair. Cutting ties was definitely the right decision. Meanwhile, I moved into a single apartment near my workplace and have been able to focus more on my job. I'm not interested in love for now, and I plan to continue delivering results at work and aim higher. Maggie, right? Nice to meet you. Your pa, oh no, dressed modestly, don't you? Mom? Did you almost call her poor just now? That's terrible, saying such a true thing. That's why I didn't say it. I stopped myself just in time, so you should too. While smirking, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law were chatting. It was their first meeting face to face. And I felt incredibly uncomfortable with their attitudes. But since they were James's family, I tried to convince myself they couldn't be bad people. The father-in-law, a famous company president I had even seen on TV, was there too. His presence was intimidating. He didn't side with anyone, merely observing. Which was somehow frightening since I couldn't tell what he was thinking. I'm Maggie, 26 years old. James and I have decided to marry. And I am currently meeting his family. My parents have passed away. So we recently visited their graves together. My father died of illness when I was young. And my mother, who raised me alone, passed away last year after falling ill suddenly. Now with no family left, I thought I had to live on my own. But James was always by my side. Without saying much or rushing anything. His quiet presence was calming. When my mother realized she was sick, she worried I would be trapped by memories and began discarding her belongings. Ultimately, Only the wedding dress she wore at her marriage to my father was left. Whether intentional or not, my parents loved each other deeply. And I guess she couldn't bring herself to throw away that memory. I too want to build a family that loves each other like my parents did. I hope to wear this wedding dress at my own wedding someday, ideally with James. 2 years later, James and I began the steps to become a real family. That wedding dress is still carefully preserved. These clothes are just more comfortable and easier to move in. I tried to respond cheerfully to the teasing from the mother-in-law and sister-in-law. It wasn't worth going into battle mode over. It was just that my clothes were more plain than theirs, no big deal. Still, I was shocked, as I had thought hard about what to wear to meet James's wealthy family. Far removed from the life of ordinary folks. Is this what commoners wear, I wonder? Maybe it is. Why don't you touch it for the memories? It's so rough and funny. They laughed again, mocking my attire. It was tough standing up to the two of them alone since James was delayed by sudden work. The conversation eventually turned to why James and I were getting married. Can you believe it's so clear just by looking at her? She's completely out of our league. Is she marrying for inheritance? Since she has no parents, is she after our wealth? How brazen. Commoners' thoughts are so barbaric. Barbaric? I wasn't after any inheritance. And I couldn't understand why I was being accused of such things. The one-sided barrage continued, and I grew tired. When I'm tired, my thoughts start to spiral into negativity. I thought, I guess I really am not good enough for James. Gradually, I couldn't even respond anymore and just looked down. That was when James arrived. Sorry I'm late. When I finally looked up, there was James's face, providing a much-needed sense of relief. Oh, there you are. We were just explaining to her how different in status she and James are, how troublesome it is. Right, Maggie? Why, yes. I was disappointed. Seeing my state, James loudly declared, status doesn't matter. I just want to marry Maggie and be with her forever. Please don't make her feel down with unnecessary comments. Anyway, if the greetings are over, we should be going. We've got a wedding meeting to attend, we're busy. Despite their arrogant demeanor, the mother and sister-in-law didn't start a fight. So, James got angry. The two seemed shocked and were visibly downcast. We were wrong. Go ahead and plan the wedding as you two like. So please, don't be so angry. The mother-in-law pleaded tearfully. She had always been the obedient good girl. So being scolded by James was a shock to her. Maggie, I'm sorry too. It wasn't all serious. Since James chose you, we support you. Let's get along from now on. Suddenly, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law turned to me with smiles. I couldn't help but wonder about their earlier behavior, but peace is best. So I greeted them with, thank you in advance. We want to support you, so let us know how the wedding preparations are going. We'll do anything we can. Thank you. Oh, and about the dress. You can choose any dress you like from the shop we always use. Ah, about the dress. James cut in. We've already decided on the dress. Maggie plans to wear her mother's heirloom dress. I had told James that I wanted to wear my mother's heirloom dress. And he was delighted and fully supportive of the idea. Oh, is that so? Well, if James thinks it's good, then it's fine by me. That's wonderful, Maggie, to be able to wear your mother's dress. Could you show it to us sometime? Yes, of course. The shift in their attitude was almost frightening. Later, when I showed the dress to the mother-in-law and sister-in-law, they praised it highly. Given that these were the same two who had called my attire poor at first meeting, I was a bit nervous about what they would say. But it was okay. Then the sister-in-law suggested, we should use one of our rooms to keep this precious dress safe. We'll even include a mannequin. It's our wedding gift to you. Oh. That's too much. It's been fine just the way it's been kept up till now. What are you talking about? It's almost time to showcase it at the wedding. So it should be stored properly. Please, let us take care of it. It will be in even better condition than now, and you can use it even after the wedding. Enthusiastically offering to store the dress on a mannequin in their room. I agreed since they were so insistent. The unused room quickly became even nicer. And the mannequin donned the dress like a display. A strange but visually appealing arrangement. I was initially worried. But it seemed James's family had come to support our marriage, which was a relief. As other preparations progressed steadily, the day before the wedding arrived. The dress was to be transported to the venue the next day. When James and I went to the room to retrieve it, there was a slight smell of burning. Maybe there was a fire nearby? The smell was strong inside the house, which was concerning. We headed straight for the dress, where the burnt smell grew stronger. After exchanging a look with James, we opened the door. And there was a shocking sight. It was burning. My mother's dress, along with the mannequin, was on fire. No way. I was too stunned to move. In the meantime, James quickly grabbed a fire extinguisher and started spraying. He tried to extinguish the flames that were spreading outside the dress. It was the first time I had ever seen a fire extinguisher in action. Before I knew it, I was crying, watching my mother's dress burn and James struggling to put it out. I felt utterly helpless and couldn't stop my tears. It was an almost unreal scene. Once the fire was out, James came back to my side. The dress was completely burnt. No, why? I didn't know what to say or feel, I was just stunned. It burnt to a nice color, didn't it? I heard a voice from behind and couldn't believe my ears. It was the mother-in-law's voice. How shameful to try to appear at our family's wedding in such a tattered dress. A poor girl after inheritance. Divine retribution, that's what this is. The mother-in-law had reverted to the disdainful person I first met. Mom, how could you? I can't forgive this. I will never forgive this. I didn't do anything specifically. But, just think, we nearly had that ragged dress at the wedding. It would have been a disgrace for generations in our family. I don't know why it burned. But it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Thankfully, it was just here that burned. Not the house. Lucky, right? Oh, and by the way, you can cancel tomorrow's ceremony. I'll cover the cancellation fees. No, we will not cancel, I said, wiping away unstoppable tears. I'm not going to be defeated. I will definitely marry James. I thought, this is the start of becoming a wonderful couple who love each other. Just like my parents. Oh really? Well, I'm looking forward to tomorrow then. The mother-in-law said dismissively as she walked away. I thought, Mom, I'm sorry. The only keepsake has turned into this. A feeling of guilt toward my mother overwhelmed me. James was still there by my side. I continued to cry for a long time, gradually calming down. But then, from my sorrow, anger began to emerge. We just wanted a happy marriage, nothing else. It was unbearable to be treated this way when we hadn't done anything wrong. The mother-in-law claimed ignorance, but I couldn't believe that was possible. For now, we decided to report to and consult with the venue. I was conflicted about whether to borrow a dress at this point. Having not considered any dress other than the one I felt nothing for any others shown to me. And so, the day of the wedding arrived. Because James is the son of a famous company president, the ceremony would be filled with television and streaming cameras. Initially, I was resistant to the idea, but I resolved myself to it, knowing it meant being with James. Peeking at the preparations, the venue looked more lavish than I imagined, making it feel like it wasn't my wedding. The mother-in-law and sister-in-law were dressed even more extravagantly, mingling and laughing with the guests, making them compliment their outfits, and saying, "James's bride is just a commoner, so plain and simple. Her dress must be something hastily put together from yesterday. Sorry, we'll be catching everyone's eyes instead." It was our wedding, but they acted as if they were the main characters. In a way, I wanted to tell them to expect to become the real main characters soon. But for now, I just quietly watched from the sidelines. The main ceremony was about to start. I had decided to walk down the aisle with James. I debated walking alone but wanted to start the path with James, who had been by my side since I thought I'd be alone. Hand in arm, I walked slowly down the aisle, reflecting on my life so far and savoring the reality of living forward with James. Compliments like "beautiful" could be heard from the guests. Usually, the entrance is watched in silence, but it was nice to hear such voices. Then, suddenly, loud laughter broke out. I can't take it anymore. "What's happening? You're making me laugh, stop it." Of course, it was the mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Thought it was a crow. Right. A wedding dress has to be white, right? Ah, see, the dress got burnt to a crisp yesterday. Maybe that's why she's wearing a burnt crisp dress. Ah, makes sense. A burnt crisp crow dress. Perfect for that commoner. They were gleefully chatting away. I endured. There was no point in retorting here. Let those who want to speak do so, I told myself, focusing on walking forward, ignoring them. I was amazed at how continuously they could dish out demeaning comments. Be quiet. It's disrespectful to James, Maggie, and everyone attending. Besides, don't you know about the black dress? Suddenly, the father-in-law spoke up. The two went silent, making faces of regret. The venue quieted down, and the ceremony proceeded solemnly. The black dress carried a strong message that it would not adhere to anyone else. After much distress about not being able to wear the original dress, this was the solution I chose. With this black dress, I wanted to affirm my love for James and aspire to be an even more loving couple than my parents. James agreed. After the incident, he couldn't genuinely look for a new white dress. Remembering my mother's dress, learning the meaning behind the black dress from the planner, I was drawn to it and decided on it. After the ceremony, there was a break before the reception. The guests were seated, and we entered to a warm welcome. Once again, we savored our happiness together. As we took our seats, a large screen in the venue displayed a video. Everyone probably expected a slideshow about how we met or from our childhood. But the video shown was completely different. It showed the room where my mother's heirloom had been stored, displaying the mannequin and the dress that had burned completely yesterday. A figure entered, set the dress on fire, watched as it spread, then turned and walked towards the camera before disappearing. The fire grew as the video played. Watching this, everyone in the venue turned their attention to one person. I thought, just as you wanted, sister-in-law. You've become the center of attention at this venue. I said this in my mind. What is this? Stop it. Turn it off. Voices of protest were heard, but there was no stopping it. I had control of the video switch. Just as the dress was almost fully engulfed, James and I appeared on screen, with him extinguishing the fire. The video also clearly captured the person hurling abuse at us, drawing everyone's attention once again. Don't look at me. This isn't me. It's a fake. Someone made a fake video. Yes, that's right. Just because the dress burned, they're trying to pin it on us. How shallow and foolish of commoners. Of course, our statuses are different, aren't they? Despite their ranting, I was no longer afraid. The strength of the black dress had given me strength as well. The video was from a hidden camera James had secretly installed in that room. It seemed he hadn't trusted his mother and sister. He showed it to me after we had decided on the dress yesterday, and I thought to reveal it at today's reception. I feared it might be deleted or edited to look fake, as the mother-in-law had mentioned. So I wanted to show it here where everyone could see. As expected, the individuals in question were denying it, but the video was unaltered. Something the police could confirm. Indeed, given that this was the wedding of a big company's president's son, there were off-duty police officers in attendance, and we managed to have an officer come to the venue. The sister-in-law seemed to be guilty of arson of her own property, which could lead to imprisonment from 6 months to 7 years. It's my house, I can do whatever I want with it. What's this about? I'm the victim here. She resisted vehemently, but it seems she didn't know that even if it's her property, arson is still a crime. Ultimately, it became clear she was just someone who, obsessed with money, lacked basic societal norms. And the mother-in-law spectacularly betrayed her daughter, claiming she acted alone. But the father-in-law did not entertain this and quickly disowned her. Right there in public, he announced a divorce. He had been fed up with their antics for a while, and this event was the last straw, convincing him she was beyond teaching proper values. Thus, due to this wedding, both the mother-in-law and sister-in-law were ousted from the family and became no longer related to me. Afterwards, as James began to be groomed as the next company president, I supported him while we built our form of happiness together. Despite my initial stereotype of a company president being arrogant, my father-in-law was not. He listened well to James and me, and incorporated employee feedback to grow the company. I looked forward to working together moving forward. After the sister-in-law's imprisonment, those two, perhaps thinking to retaliate, began frequently uploading videos slandering me. That commoner has stayed in our house targeting our wealth. To everyone watching this video, don't be deceived. Help us return to that house quickly, were some of the baffling messages in their videos. However, because the live video broadcast during the ceremony showed them laughing at the bride, no one paid them any attention anymore. Their videos gained no traction, only accumulating dislikes. Yet they continued uploading videos, and with each upload, their clothes appeared cheaper, and their financial difficulties became increasingly evident. They might have hoped to earn from the videos, but eventually, even that ceased. How are the former sister-in-law and her mother? Both with challenging personalities and now with a criminal record. Managing to live well? The answer is unclear. But one can guess that their lives, far from being as comfortable as before. In contrast, James and I, despite being busy, are truly becoming a family. Today, looking at our wedding photos, we laughed together. I wouldn't change a thing about you. I will continue to live with James, committed to this in my wedding dress. I feel like my parents are watching over us from heaven with smiles. The inheritance of $10 million from our parents will be all mine. It's obvious that our parents, who care more about me than someone as unattractive as you, would want me to inherit everything. My sister didn't help at all with our parents' funeral after their sudden deaths. Yet, as soon as it ended, she started discussing the inheritance. What she insisted was hardly acceptable though. Fine by me. You can have the entire inheritance, but just don't ever contact me again. Who would want to? You don't seem to realize that you're the one being cut off, not me. I turned my back on my sister as she laughed mockingly. I had lost my sister following the loss of our parents, but I felt no sadness. I am Hillary. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. Both parents started their own companies and were entrepreneurs launching new ventures. Thanks to them, both my sister Megan and I graduated from private high schools and universities. After university, I joined the company where I work now. But Megan never looked for a job after graduating. She just roamed around, occasionally working as a part-timer or a temp worker, without any real consideration for her future. Her actions were always impulsive. Still, our parents indulged her, always providing money for her escapades and living expenses when she wasn't working. They told me to plan my life carefully and manage my finances. Yet they never held Megan to these standards. The reason was simple. Megan had a very pretty face. She inherited our mother's large eyes and double eyelids, our father's sharp nose and beautiful eyebrows, and even our grandmother's good figure, making her a beauty that turned heads everywhere she went. Loved by everyone and confident, Megan was always popular and charming wherever she went. In contrast, I was born with our mother's low nose, our father's small eyes and single eyelids, and our grandfather's less flattering physique. I was shy and slow to warm up to relatives. Until Megan was born 6 years later, inheriting all the best features from our parents and grandparents. I had been the beloved first grandchild. But once she arrived, everyone doted on her. I loved Megan dearly too. She would follow me around, calling me Hillary, and I took great care of her. By the time she was in elementary school, she was so cute that she received offers to become a child model or entertainer from various magazines. This adoration, however, became painful for me as I entered middle school. Scouts who came to sign Megan would want to see me, but they lost interest in me instantly, and her friends openly stated how different we looked. Gradually, I began to feel the pain of hearing from others that Megan is cute, but her sister is. Even when I put effort into makeup and dressing well, Megan, laughing in her school tracksuit, was seen as cuter. Despite managing my diet, Megan, who would eat lots of sweet bread at night, maintained a better figure. No matter how hard I tried, I was always seen merely as Megan's foil. Worse still, as Megan grew up, she became aware of her blessed looks and started to openly ridicule me, feeling superior. In high school, her harassment began in earnest. It was routine for her to hide and take my things, or even claim the clothes I had saved up my allowance to buy. At times, she would even stage dramas in my room with her clothes, crying to our parents that I had taken them. Despite my protests of innocence, with a charming Megan at the center of our home and me locked away studying, it was clear whom our parents would believe. Hillary, you're the older sister. Don't be mean to Megan. Megan is just messing with you because she likes you. You're her sister, so please forgive a little mischief. No matter what I did, I was painted the villain, and if I locked my door for protection, I was scolded for not trusting family. Fed up with such a life, I started living alone as soon as I graduated from university, staying away from home. Despite my parents' pleas to come home, I never wanted to return to that house. I deliberately took temporary jobs during the holiday season just to avoid going back. About 3 years into this life, our parents were suddenly killed in a traffic accident. Megan and I met for the first time in a long while. Throughout the funeral, Megan was constantly in tears, so I handled the necessary arrangements, crying myself too. But a huge problem remained: inheritance. As the only heirs, it was easy to predict what Megan would say. During a later meeting at our childhood home to discuss the inheritance, our parents' estate is worth about $10 million. I'm taking it all. After all, you're unattractive, and our parents loved me more. They would be pleased. Oh, want some money for plastic surgery? I don't want it. What? Megan was surprised by my response, but no matter how much I thought about it, I didn't desire the inheritance. There was no time to mourn our parents, overwhelmed by managing relatives, subordinates, and business partners who attended the wake and funeral, and hearing comments like, are they sisters? They don't look alike at all. And seeing Megan's smug look made me tired of it all. I don't want the inheritance. You can have all $10 million, but there's one condition. At the mention of a condition, Megan tensed up and glared at me sharply. I won't inherit anything. In exchange, I'm severing all family ties with you right here, today. From now on, we won't contact each other or ask for help, no matter what. That's my condition. Megan looked dumbfounded at first, but realizing the terms were in her favor, she began to smirk. $10 million and I get to cut you off? That's perfect. Why would I ever contact someone as ugly as you? Just don't come crying to me later asking for money. Ignoring my sister's mocking laughter, I left our family home. I had lost all my family members but felt no sadness, only relief at being freed. 3 months later, my peace ended. Megan started bombarding me with calls. I hung up immediately, but she kept calling. Since I use my phone for work, I couldn't just turn it off, so reluctantly, I answered. Hillary, I need a favor. I don't have a sister. It's annoying to keep getting calls, so stop contacting me. As I tried to hang up, Megan ranted on without even apologizing for breaking our agreement. Afterward, I tried to spend Mom and Dad's savings, but a friend who works at the city hall asked if I had consulted about the inheritance tax. It's inheritance if I, their daughter, receive Dad's money, right? But do I have to pay taxes just for receiving Dad's money? When I told my friend I would inherit $10 million, she said I should consult a lawyer. But I don't know anything about lawyers, so I want you to handle it for me. Her absurdity gave me a headache, but it wasn't worth the trouble to argue. I decided to tell her the facts only. As for the inheritance tax, you don't have to pay in this case. since the amount is under $11.4 million. You can only inherit everything because I renounced my claim. I've already informed a lawyer that I won't inherit anything. So, I have no right to do anything about Dad's estate anymore. Wow, that's great. Yet, you should ask a lawyer for details. Just so you know, you cannot just inherit it automatically. When a person dies, his property passes to his personal representative, who then distributes the deceased person's assets after deducting the inheritance tax. If money in the bank is held in the deceased person's name only, then family members usually cannot get access until probate is granted to the personal representative. You got it? Anyway, don't contact me again. When I said that, Megan lost her words and ended the call. It seems she didn't check the facts about inheritance. If she keeps this up, she probably doesn't realize that her assumption of inheriting $10 million is fundamentally flawed. But explaining or handling it for her? No, thanks. I finally relaxed, relieved at the silence of the phone. Later, Megan did consult a lawyer. She found out during the estate investigation that the $10 million was the total value of our parents' assets, not readily inheritable cash. Moreover, most of that money was tied to the businesses they had started. And Megan, who had no involvement with the companies, was not entitled to it. Worse, she was now responsible for repaying debts due to being a co-signer on some business loans. How much of the inheritance can I actually receive? As she offset the debts against the assets, the inheritance amount dwindled. Megan, panicking, clung to the lawyer after being told she would only receive about $1 million. She kept calling me in tears. Hey, Hillary, I'm only getting $1 million. This doesn't make any sense. That's still a lot of money, like winning a lottery. Didn't I say not to contact me anymore? Despite the substantial amount, Megan, who had expected $10 million, became a nuisance with her frequent crying calls. And Megan's troubles didn't end there. Even though her inheritance was nowhere near $1 million, rumors spread that Megan inherited $10 million. She was hounded by unknown relatives and so-called friends asking for money. And even stalkers and extortionists appeared. Hillary, help me. Where are you now? I'm suffering so much. Her screams filled the voicemail on my phone. Judging by the content, Megan had probably visited my old apartment. But I had already terminated the lease and moved out. With no other way to reach me, she kept calling and leaving messages. She eventually went to the police, but since she herself had boasted about inheriting $10 million from our parents and suddenly started gifting designer bags to her friends, it was a self-inflicted situation. As expected, the rumors had spread. The police were at their wits' end, but eventually strongly advised her to move. Hillary, I've met the man of my dreams. Peter doesn't know about the inheritance and truly loves me. One day, the tone of the voicemail shifted from crying to cheery. I suspected a scam, and sure enough, the man Megan met by chance and started dating, named Peter, proposed they move in together. After learning she had substantial money in the bank, he advised against the bank's risks and suggested keeping the money in a safe at home. Megan ignored the bank's warnings and closed her account, converting most of her inheritance into cash, which she stored in the safe. The next day, the safe was empty, and Peter never returned. I was deceived. Peter was only after the money. This is the worst. My whole life is the worst. Hillary. Why aren't you answering the phone? Why won't you help me? It's because of such an attitude that you're ugly. Megan's chaotic voicemail messages kept coming in regularly. Why wouldn't she be suspicious of a man who, just after meeting and learning about her savings, immediately told her to close her bank account and turn everything into cash? Instead of calling me, she should have been more cautious about her surroundings. Hillary, where are you? Let's live together. Strangers come to my place every day. Help me. It seems Megan moved back to our old house after she could no longer afford the rent for the luxury apartment she had rented for her extravagant lifestyle. Now that she's back, self-proclaimed relatives who found out are constantly visiting her, claiming the house is too big for her to live in alone and she should live with them, which is driving her mentally exhausted. Twice a day, she leaves voicemail messages begging for my help. And finally, I made up my mind. Hello? Aren't you tired of leaving these annoying messages every day? Are you that bored? One day, I answered a call from Megan, and she seemed shocked to hear my voice. Hillary. Help me. I hate this life. I want to live with you. Where should I go? No. I made a promise with you, remember? I renounced the inheritance in exchange for you never contacting me again. How many times have you broken that promise? I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Please come and get me. I can't stand this anymore. Please help. Megan seemed not to understand my words, only repeating her pleas for help. I said no. The reason I picked up the phone is that this is the last time. I'm changing my number, so it's useless for you to call this one anymore. You're just wasting your money on call charges. Let me tell you, I'm feeling really good right now. A nasty person who always lied and put me down has cut ties and destroyed herself. I'm going to live happily, so you better do your best too. Megan's screams echoed over the phone. I thought I heard her begging for forgiveness and asking for help. But that no longer concerns me. I had renounced my inheritance as Megan wanted, and kept our promise by not contacting her. Yet, she ruined herself on her own. The thought of never having to be in contact or compared with my sister again filled me with relief. I hung up the noisy phone, turned it off, and headed to the mobile shop in high spirits. Since then, I've been commuting to work from my new home, improving my skills, and rapidly advancing in my career. My boss commented, "You used to get down comparing yourself with others, but that's gone now." My colleagues noted at lunch, "You used to say things like I'm just. But you don't anymore. You seem brighter and more approachable." Finally, I've come to appreciate myself without comparing myself to others. Although I no longer have any family, I am living a content and happy life.